Hey, family. This is Mark Fields. I'm the leader of the Kinship Collective podcast, but also I get to walk alongside the Presbytery towards our goals of seeing churches increase in vitality, of seeing more people come together in worship and expanding our Christ-centered diversity. Today, we get to talk with Reverend Dr. Randy Working. He's the pastor of Acton Presbyterian Church and Lancaster Presbyterian Church. And we're going to get to know more of his story. Randy, thank you for taking time to be with us today. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We just got through a week of visiting with our daughter from England and with her family, so it's been a blessing. Hmm.
That's beautiful. Randy, when I think about your story, you are leading two communities on the very kind of edge of our presbytery. I want to know more about you, the kind of leader that takes that on, the journey you've been in to have your earned PhD and to lead these two communities and with some very unique things happening. So, Randy, I want to take us back to, can you remember the earliest moments when you understood some sort of sense of invitation into ministry?
Yes, I can. I've been privileged to have some wonderful mentors in my life, beginning with my parents, and both my father and my mother were Presbyterian clergy, and I got to kind of witness their journey. Um, for me, my call to ministry had a lot to do with the my experience in the family, and we had a in as I was growing up, we were a family of five sons, and the three of them were natural born sons, and two of them were adopted orphans, one from uh, one from Korea and one from Vietnam. And as well as that, my father and mother discerned a call into ministry when they were just in their early 30s and felt God calling them to a career change. And so they left business, or my father left business, and carted us all off to seminary with him. And he experienced a call into Presbyterian ministry. So that provided, I guess, a model for me, and I had never sensed that God was calling me to ministry, although I had a faith experience and committed myself to Christ when I was a kid, probably about 6 years old. But for me, the experience of growing up and doing evening devotions, reading the Bible with the family, and praying, and I I felt that God was calling me into the world of possibly teaching and of the world of art. And so that's what I pursued at first. When I graduated from a Presbyterian college from Whitworth University up in Spokane, and I went and did a master's in fine art in drawing and painting at the University of Washington. And I got the opportunity to work with the great Jacob Lawrence, an African American painter, one of the great 20th century painters, and he was shaped by the WPA projects in the 1930s in Harlem. But he had a great painting series of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Um, and so I began to look for a job toward the end of that course of study, and they were very hard to come by right at that point. There were really not a lot of teaching jobs to be had. And I talked with Arthur Glasser, who was a great Presbyterian missionary in uh, in China and elsewhere. And he was doing a mission conference for my dad's church, and he challenged me and said, "Well, why don't you take a year out and serve in mission somewhere, see what God is doing, and get some deeper training and discipleship." So I took that to heart and got the opportunity to serve with international student ministry in Switzerland. And my wife, I had met on a junior year abroad. My wife is a native French speaker from Switzerland, and we decided that that would be a great adventure and a learning experience. And as we did that, 1 year turned into two and turned into three, and eventually I spent a total of 4 years there. And somebody came up to me at one point, somebody I was working with Campus Life in Switzerland. And one of the leaders said, you should become a minister. And that just sort of seized my heart and my
Mm,
imagination.
hmm.
And I thought, I really want to do that. I'm not too sure how the art and theology and ministry kind of fits together, but I've been on a journey ever since then of trying to figure that out.
Mm. I'm interested as I'm hearing you share your story, the just the ways and this feels common to I think the human experience where day by day we have a vision, we pursue what we understand to be true, and it seems as we follow that path and God kind of opens doors sometimes that are different. Then what happens after the 4 years in abroad?
Well, we returned to the States, my bride and myself, and we enrolled, matriculated at Fuller Seminary, and we had a strong family connection there, both through many of the Presbyterians, many of the deans, several of them were Presbyterian, and many of the faculty. And my dad had graduated from there and was ordained at Bel Air Pres. But so we returned there. It seemed like a natural, and some of the folks who had spoken into my life were there, including Art Glasser. But had a great experience, and I think at the time there were some 400 Presbyterian students there. It was a strong fellowship, and we felt like God was leading us there. Had a great experience, and I was under care at Bel Air, where I had gone through junior high and high school, and so came through there and was ordained into pastoral ministry as an associate up in Sacramento area. So that's kind of how we got there, and I think I had a sense along the way of following God as an adventure. It probably has something to do with your whole family, and it has to do with Bible study and prayer, and it has also to do with we had special needs children in our family. One of them was my little brother, 3 years younger, who suffered from epilepsy and from a developmental handicap, and so he had a rough journey as a kid. But it seemed to us that it had to do with God's healing and whatever form that might take, and had to do with my Korean orphan brother who suffered from epilepsy, or excuse me, from polio as a baby, and he still suffers from a degenerative form of polio. But that was all a part of the package, and us discerning together as a family that we want to be about growing in the depth of our faith, and about growing in our relationships, and about pursuing God's call in ministry.
Mm. One thing that really stands out to me is the idea of following God as a family adventure. Well, you mentioned it as following God as an adventure. You mentioned this when you went abroad with your wife, and then you mentioned it again as an understanding of kind of the way things were unfolding. Is that a big theme for ministry or for you as you have followed God?
Yes, it has been. We think if God has a claim on our lives, that impacts those around us too, and that we need to be collectively discerning how He's calling. So that has a whole lot to do with the family in the midst of that, and it has a lot to do in our particular vocation. I would say in mine, but also in my family. We have three authors in our family and who are published, and my brother Russell has had a career in journalism, and he is, by the way, he's married to a Russian wife, and he has a Russian stepson and a Russian daughter-in-law, and so adding sort of to the mix, then my wife being Swiss, and um, but he is a writer, and then I've published some works, and my mother has too. We also have three artists in the family. So my handicapped natural born brother, he is he is a terrific artist, and he does powerful work that's I think of it as being primitivistic and kind of Matisse-ian in its form, but everything he does is on a Bible theme. And he
Mm,
does angels and the prophets and the gospels, and he has done that for I think almost 40 years. He's worked in studios and had a very productive artistic life. So I've stepped away from painting as a major focus, but still have tried to keep my hand in it. And still am happy to have paint under my fingernails most of the time, and be able to show here and there occasionally, and be in contests. So and I've done some teaching in that area at University of Washington and
mm,
Westmont College and elsewhere. But yeah, it's a family endeavor, and so to me, it seems like we have this kind of creative mixture of ministry, of theology studies, of painting, and of a sense that God has a claim on our whole person and on us in culture as well. And in
mhm,
fact, in my doctoral studies, that I tried to bring together ministry, the visual arts, and in theology too.
mhm. Randy, when you share about family discernment, this is to me, I'm a father and a husband in a young family. And for me, many steps along the way have been marked by discernment. And early on, it was my wife and I, and we think about, what is good for us, or how do we sense this or discern this together. Then after that, now it's what would this, look like for our daughters and for us. And our dynamics have been growing and unfolding and along the journey. So when you think about what it looks like to discern as a family, I guess I'm thinking of a nuclear family unit. What does
Mm.
that look like for you?
Well, I think a major part of that is to make sure we're in dialogue together, and that we don't assume just because I've got a bee in my bonnet about something that is everybody's call, and so we need to test that out, and we test that by talking with our mentors. We test it by talking with each other and by prayer. And we've tried to do we had three daughters, and when they were growing up, we pretty consistently did family devotions together. We're always trying to do that, sometimes bucking against the tide,
Hmm.
but that was very meaningful to us. And certainly, we had the sense that my wife and I needed to come together and have a shared sense that this is God's calling for both of us. We saw that in our daughters' lives, to give them the freedom to pursue what God was calling them to do, and so not have a preset formula and say this is the journey you have to take. We have one daughter with some special needs and neurological needs, and who
Hmm.
lives with us, and her name is Magali, and she is a creative and gifted young woman. So she brings us a lot of support and happiness in the home, and even if she's limited by severe chronic pain. We have another daughter who lives up in Lompoc and works. This is northern Santa Barbara County, and she works with horses. And then we have a daughter who's an academic. She felt God calling her when she was pondering what she wanted to do for college. That she felt God calling her to leave the States when she graduated from high school, and she went over to one of the ancient universities in Scotland. She was at St. Andrews,
Mm,
and she was there for 4 years reading English and medieval history. And then she went on to London and did her master's. And then she went on to Durham in England and did her PhD. Then a 5-year postdoc in Oxford. And now she's on the faculty at York.
mm,
So, in her family, her partner is British. So now she has Swiss citizenship as well, and so now their daughter, our first grandbaby, is British and has a Swiss passport, and will soon have an American one too.
mm,
So, boy, she has charted her course and pursued it with a great deal of determination,
Mm-hmm.
and we rejoice in that.
Mm-hmm.
So we rejoice. We think that's in some ways, a microcosm of the diversity and just the creativity of the family of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, although we would love to be closer into their orbit, but we're just rejoicing that she has found her calling. And by the way, her partner is from an academic family too, and he is an Oxford PhD in English literature, and both his parents are on the faculty at Cambridge
Mm.
as anthropologists. So, so we say, man, she has just the sense of how God has gifted her, and she is absolutely determined to explore and to apply her gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been glad to give our own daughters the freedom to hear God's call on their lives.
Mm-hmm. I I think it's a beautiful testament to your faith. I think for me, one of the greatest acts of faith as a parent is to trust the work of God in our children's lives, especially when it may feel incongruent to what we may want or what we may discern or what we may think is the way. And I think it's a
Hmm.
beautiful, beautiful gift to our children to put faith in the journeys that they put faith in and to walk by faith in that way with them. I think is an extraordinary gift.
Hmm.
Randy, when you were sharing about your daughter and your daughters and the different kind of paths that they've taken, I'm thinking about people who are on their journey and it may not feel as clear. Seems like, that journey, she dug her heels in, she knew what she wanted to do. It was, 4 years here. She knew she was going to take that train all the way to the end of the tracks academically, so to speak. For you, when you're counseling with someone who may not be as sure and they're discerning life path or a transition, how would you navigate that? Let's say somebody in your daughter's situation, and she's taking the train down the track and she's now thinking, okay, maybe I'm sensing something different, or there's a new opportunity and she may be less clear. How would you counsel them?
Well, I guess I always have somewhere in the back of my mind what Eugene Peterson said about finding your vocation in life, and it's at the intersection of the world's needs and of your greatest joy. And I love that. I think there will be a congruency. There will be a sense of I was made for this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
God has programmed me this way, and and so I want to pursue it, and I want to honor Him to the best of my ability through through applying myself joyfully and taking risks in order to pursue this. So there have been some points in our lives where we felt like, okay, we're stepping out in faith, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit scary, but without faith, it is impossible to please God.
Mm.
And so we have felt like we have trusted. So thus far, the Lord has been good to us, and
Mm-hmm.
so we will trust God for the next step in the journey. So I try to encourage folks that way, and part of it is to experiment, to try things. I try to get folks to in my congregations to challenge them. Maybe you want to think about going in mission with a presbytery and serving a short-term mission. Maybe you want to. We just had a guy from our congregation here that went on the impact mission trip to Romania last summer,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and I think that's we hope that's a blessing for the folks they're going to serve and partner with in some other cultural context.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly want to see that. We want it to be a blessing for him too, and also for our congregation. That I think it people say, "Wow, maybe we haven't sent somebody in mission before, or maybe it's been a long time." And look what that does in their life and their faith. And
Mm.
so I think a part of it is to challenge people. Would you consider this? Um, in maybe a less dramatic way, part of it is to get people to help and worship. And Mark, I was touched by this, but one of our African women, I asked her to read scripture, and afterwards she said, "I couldn't believe you did that." And I was reading scripture, in front of I was speaking in front of white folks,
Mm.
and gosh, I didn't know I could do that, and I felt
Mhm.
convicted by that. And I
Mhm.
said, that's really touching. But yeah, we want to lift people up and say we we applaud their gifts. We rejoice with them that they can exercise these gifts. And so we had another one of our new members, and we couldn't remember the last time new members have come in at Lancaster. And we just brought in a few months ago 7 new members, and for some churches that might seem like a small number, but for us it was really significant. And we had persons of color, and we had these young guys that were in their 20s that committed to the
Mhm.
church and felt like they found a home here. So we just think that's fantastic. But we want to give people the opportunity to kind of stretch their wings in faith and see what God does with that.
That is so beautiful. I want to talk more about that. So you mentioned distinctly African sister sharing for the first time in front of white folks. The honor and the leadership within her being honored in a way that she seems to be never anticipated. Would you speak to more about what is happening around that? You mentioned new members. Share with us more about that whole story of what God is doing.
Well, at some point, Mark, about 2 years ago, we had some African women